Most businesses fail. The question is, how can you have a business that doesn't fail? We found 5 businesses with the lowest failure rate associated with them. This is all backed by data because I think it's valid to be worried about having a business that fails. I mean, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, which sounds really fancy and official, 20% of us small businesses fail within the first year. Then that jumps up to like 50% by the year. 5 and after 10 years, 2/3 of all businesses have gone under. That's not good odds, not great odds at all. So if we actually look at the data to figure out which ones have the highest likelihood to succeed, then you can determine if you want to jump into those pools. I always talk about the most important decision you make as the first deal you do or the first business you start. Because if the first one fails, your likelihood of taking the risk again is incredibly diminished. This is called your recency bias. So if your recency bias is winning, that's why we want small wins. Then you are more likely to go win again or take more risks. If your recency bias is losing or things that feel bad, you're less likely to continue to take risk. So let's get to the data and see which businesses have the lowest. This is going to bankrupt me potential. All right? Number 1, laundromats. An amazingly low failure rate according to Laundry. Lux laundromats have about a 95% success rate over a 5-year period. And the Chamber of Commerce did a study in partnership with Speed Queen, where they show that they have about a 93% success rate. So somewhere in the 90s, let's call it. Again, nothing's guaranteed in business, but that's one of the reasons I talk about these laundromats. Like my gateway drug to business buying, they have a low failure rate. They're simple to understand quarter machines, a little bit of a dryer, a little bit of a washer. They typically don't take millions to start or buy, and it also turns out people need to wash their clothes even during recessions, so you have downside protection. Lastly, there's a passive component. If you do laundromats as an absentee business, you can run it remote or with very few employees or contractors. Your employees end up being your machines. So here is number 2, rental property businesses. You know, I think it was Andrew Carnegie that said, 90% of all millionaires become. So, through owning real estate, more money has been made in real estate than almost all industrial investments combined. So maybe it makes sense that they have an 85.3% success rate. Why is real estate interesting, and why does it have a low failure rate? Well, one is because, again, it's a simple business with hard assets. So, you have your house, the market is really efficient. So typically your house is worth what the market says that it is. There's not a lot of room for variance there or change. You typically have monthly cash flow in the form of rental income. It's pretty easy to model because, upfront also interesting parts about real estate are obviously things like appreciation baked in 4% a year on average, or my favorite word, leverage. This is the form of mortgages, right? So you have the ability to use somebody else's money in order to buy real estate, and then that also allows you to have tax benefits, like 1031 exchanges where you sell to defer capital gains, depreciation, and amortization, which basically are a different way for you to take write-offs on your taxes. Overall, there's also great tax benefits to being a real estate investor only. And then there's the passive component in that. You could just hire a property manager. There's no such thing as free money with no work. But real estate prices are interesting if you're in the right cycle of the market now. Right now, I think real estate's priced pretty high, but falling fast. I mean, California today, real estate prices are down like 20 to 30% here. And you need to think about, can I qualify for a loan? Can I cover the mortgage? But this success rate is probably there for all the reasons that we talked about. Even if you're making a small percentage monthly, like the average rental property, net's about $462 a month, so it's not going to make you a billionaire. But you probably can understand how to grow the business, how not to grow the business, and what a good deal looks like with a little bit of work. All right. Number 3, self-storage facility. If you don't like the idea of real estate investing for a multifamily, let's say, and you don't want to deal with 10 or trash and toilets, self-storage have less of those things. They have been one of the leading asset classes in real estate since 2008. And according to a few studies, one by Rhino Building, these resilient businesses have like a 92% success rate. One caveat here, I would say, though, is there are a lot of these self-storage facilities, so will that 92% rate continue? I'd want to watch what's going to happen the next couple months and years. But what's fascinating about this asset class is advances in technology. make this not only possible but pretty standard to run these things remote. So basically you have keyless entry, you have tracking systems, you have security systems, you have automated bill pay, you have all automated contracts. All of this allows people to get in and out of their units without you. Then there's the value add component, adding things to the business to make it more valuable and efficient. They're high with this type of asset class. It doesn't take a ton to make self-storage pretty interesting. In fact, look at what you can do if you just paint the front of your self-storage unit and what the normal increase the property value is for that. So the phone has allowed us to have no manager on site needed in most ways. Number 4. Transportation businesses, last mile delivery. I think last mile delivery is the biggest change in our economy in the last 10 years when it comes to transportation and logistics with e-commerce coming along the gig economy online platforms. It's more needed than ever to have a way to get the goods into our greedy little mitts and porches, basically. Trucking that delivers goods or people from one place to another for a fee is transportation and logistics. We have a whole article on here on how one gent turned this idea of a short-distance trucking company into $2,200 a day. It's really good. But this can come in many forms, from like a full-fledged long-haul trucking business to a simple little side hustle driving for Uber on the weekends, or everything in between. These businesses have a success rate about 76.4%. That's kind of fascinating because I thought these businesses would be more complex now. There is a massive difference between short and long haul trucking or shipping food from Uber and long-haul trucking. So your results are going to vary, but on average, these businesses have a high success rate, I think, because again, we don't have that many inputs. I'd worry about scale giving the demand for drivers if you wanted to really create a huge empire, but as a job turned into a business, this one could be interesting and relatively low risk. You could buy a truck that's going to have an inherent value in it, a little bit of depreciation after you buy it, maybe if you buy it new, and it's your time to start with actually running the routes or having somebody else, but you don't have a lot of what's called capex or upfront expenses in order to run the business. And so not only does it have a relatively low failure rate, but I always looking for how can I make sure a deal can never bankrupt me. I don't ever want to do a deal where if this one deal goes sideways especially. Vending machine routes, so you don't need a lot of cash. 3 to 5K, you buy a vending machine and get started, or you're super smart and industrious and you buy a used one for $800 like this. Once you have your vending machine, couple different things you need to do for IT. Find a well-trafficked location, negotiate to put it in for, as a service or for a rental fee. Then fill inventory, great little starter business. I wouldn't do it if I was a pro or wanted to make a lot of money. Meaning if I wanted to make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, this business is probably really good for your first 20, 30, 50. Maybe you could get to 100,000, but it's a great business to learn things like logistics, pricing margins, managing a few contractors, or running it by yourself. You start small, it's not going to bankrupt you. Figure out how the business works, and then you slowly expand. And this business has more than a 90% almost success rate. Then you could eventually have a bunch of them, roll them up, and sell them as a group. So the actual success rate for a vending machine business varies from 90, according to Drop Vending, who's in the space. Although I think it'd be a hard slog, so when you combine the low failure rate, affordable startup cost, and simple operations of this business, I really like this starter business for people who want to hustle. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more upcoming videos. See you soon.